The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back into SEC Talk, and we're heading into week number 9. The month of October is almost behind us, and we're going to be heading into the month of November, and that's whenever the college football season really starts to heat up, and that's when we're going to talk more about postseason play. You know, we get to the SEC Championship, and I'm sure one of our lovely SEC teams will be in the college football playoff like they always are. So we got a lot to recap, a busy slate in week number 8. And then we'll talk about some of the marquee matchups heading into week number 9. With all that, back again is Wade. How you doing?
I'm doing great, y'all. A good weekend of football, especially for the LSU Tigers. They head into the bye week, so we don't have a ton to talk about this week. But as always, it's fun to chat football with you, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely. That big matchup is looming. We'll get to that in next week's show, the LSU Bama game. The winner of that is looking like to be the SEC West winner, depending on what Ole Miss got. Ole Miss still has to go on the road to Athens so that SEC West race could be decided. The East is also going to be decided the next couple of weeks. You know, Georgia, Florida, we got them next week, this week actually. And then Missouri and Georgia will be facing off in the next coming weeks. So we'll have both for the SEC East and the SEC West race decided in the next coming weeks. So that's definitely exciting. But before we get into all that, let's dive into our SEC teams in the AP Top 25. Now, there was a little bit of shakeup. Still the same 6 teams that you saw on last week's show. Still number 1 is the Georgia Bulldogs. With all of the chaos that happened, you know, we saw North Carolina get beat. Washington almost got beat but survived a test. And then we also saw Penn State and Ohio State. So that kind of shaked up the top 10 a little bit. You see Alabama is back in the top 10 after, you know, the Crimson Tide lost to Texas. Alabama, you know, had a slow start against Tennessee. It's starting to look like a team that we all thought that they were going to be coming into the season. So they come in at number 9. Number 12 is Ole Miss. Ole Miss continues to climb back in the rankings after a quality win on the road in Jordan-Hare. And then LSU is another team that is on the rise after a big victory against Army. I think that everybody saw that coming. Army was not a very good football team coming into Death Valley. They were only a 2-win team, and their offense was very limited, especially with their starting quarterback being out. They had to go to a true freshman, and that definitely didn't fare out well for Army. Number 16, Missouri. The Battle of Columbia. Columbia, Missouri was the victors, as you see number 16. And then Tennessee, really the only SEC team that didn't really have any positive advantage. They move all the way down to number 21. So what are your overall thoughts heading into week number 9?
Yeah, I think these are clearly the top teams in the conference. You got some teams that could work their way in toward the year, but ultimately, these are probably going to be the ones that are ranked. I think the thing that stands out to me the most is Missouri, certainly number 16. We know that offense is really good, but the defense looked pretty lights out as well. So this is a team that, like we mentioned, I mean, they're looking at 9 or 10 wins, and that would be huge for Drinkowitz and his program. I mean, he would really have them on the map. Just personally as a coach and then as a program.
Yeah, Missouri really taking a lot of momentum. You know, they lost that game against LSU, but they were able to bounce back with 2 good wins, and they head into the bye week. And like I mentioned, Georgia game is looming, and, you know, whoever is going to win that is probably going to be your SEC East winner, depending on if, you know, Florida can knock off an upset this weekend. We will see. But I think that Missouri is a team, if you're an SEC fan, Missouri's got to be a team for you to watch. And I think that they have one of the best shots to really knock off Georgia. So we'll definitely keep an eye out on those Missouri Tigers. Let's get now to our reminder. We always like to get our fans involved here on the show. So if you have any questions, we're pretty much at the halfway point of this college football season. We're getting closer and closer to talking about bowl games and also the postseason action. If you're maybe an Arkansas fan and want to get rid of Sam Pittman, if you have any other thoughts about that, how your team is doing at the midway point, who's your MVP of the season so far in the SEC, let us know down in the comments. We definitely want some interaction there. So we will move on now to one of our fan favorite segments, and that is SEC Talk. Last week, I lied to you. The temperatures were on the downfall, and then Mother Nature is like, nope, it's going to be 89 and 90 degrees throughout the weekend. So enjoy that. But hopefully, as we get on to November and the month of December, we'll have some more golf weather. So if you want to upgrade your golf gear, head on over to Mahler Bros Golf. That's MahlerBrosGolf.com. You can use code BELLYUP, 15% off of your purchase. So that is BELLYUP, 15% off with Mahler Bros Golf. Okay, let's get into the rules before we get into recapping how our teams did in week number 8. So as an add-on to these rules, we are doing total yardage. So quarterbacks, you would get the passing yardage and the rushing yardage. The receivers would get the receiving yards, and if they go on the run, then they get that as well. So the roster looks like one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, and a defense. And I can't wait for the bowl season. This gets even better as it goes to 2 of each. And once again, you cannot use a player you picked from last week. So this was one of the closest battles in SEC fantasy that I can remember. Wade, why don't you take it away with how your team did in week number 8?
Yeah, so I had the Missouri duo. As y'all recall, I picked Brady Cook at quarterback and then Luther Burden at wide receiver. Let's dive into Cook. He didn't really get it done through the air for my team. He threw for 198 yards, but he did add over 60 yards with his legs. So that was a big difference in this one, kind of showcasing his dual threat capabilities. And then Mario Anderson for South Carolina. It was just a bad day for the South Carolina offense in general, but he was able to muster 68 yards. I'll take it. That's, a middle of the road performance when it comes to SEC fantasy. Luther Burden third. He's as consistent as they get, right up there with Malik Neighbors and Brian amongst the leading receivers in the SEC. He had 90 yards. So Brady Cook was dialed into him with about half of his passing yards going to Mr. Burden. And then the Arkansas defense ended up losing this ball. It wasn't their fault on defense. They let up just 200 total yards. That's called getting the job done. Unfortunately for them, I think they were held to 200 yards on offense as well and lost 7-3. But job well done for the Razorbacks here on SEC Fantasy. And that gives me a total score of 236 yards.
Yeah, definitely a great game. And I'll go right through it. Brady Cook, he had 198, but he also had 64 rushing yards. So that definitely got you up there. Mario Anderson, he had over 60 yards rushing and also had a couple of yards through the air in the receiving game. Then Luther Burden, of course, once he gets back to your team, he goes back to the receiver that we thought that he always is. But Burden, he had 90 yards and also 10 more yards to that. And like you mentioned, Arkansas defense in a defensive battle, 200 yards to give you to 236. We'll see if that will hold on as we go on now to how my team did. And we'll start off with the quarterback. And as you can already tell, I definitely screwed up with going with Arkansas's quarterback because Arkansas, KJ Jefferson had 97 yards on through the air, but also on the ground. That's where he really got over that 100-yard mark. He had 38 yards on the ground. Cody Schrader has been one of the best running backs. We've really talked very high about Ray Davis of Kentucky, but Cody Schrader, he has just been on the money, 159 yards on the ground. Blake Neighbors is also one of the consistent. We talked about Luther Burden being one of the best in the SEC. Blake Neighbors is definitely right up there, 121 yards. So we all talked about which wide receiver is going to be for LSU. Brian Thomas, he had 122 yards, and Blake Neighbors had 120. Both would have been a bad pick, and LSU's defense was the defense to go. Only 193 yards, given that most of that was on the ground. Army didn't really throw the ball that very well as 233. So, yes, that is only a 3-point margin. So, Wade gets back on track with a victory, and we'll head on now to week number 9 in SEC Fantasy Draft. We will go through our teams. The weeks get harder and harder. And no, we did not pick, Ole Miss's defense against Vanderbilt. Like Wade mentioned, we're going to start implementing that rule. We don't want to bully Vanderbilt too much on this show, but we're going to go dive into the quarterbacks. You're going to go with Carson Beck go on the road here, but it's a neutral site game against Florida. And then Joe Milton will face off against Kentucky. So why don't you talk about Carson Beck's matchup against Florida?
Yeah, I think Carson Beck is the leader of this offense, and he's around. I don't think we've seen a Georgia wide receiver on the show yet here, because Carson Beck doesn't just lock into one guy. He hits all of his receivers, and they're going to need him even more so now with Brock Bowers, his number one target, the tight end, out of this game. So I think he'll spread it around, do a good job for the Georgia Bulldogs. And he's sneaky with his legs. Every now and then he can scramble for some extra yardage. And since it is college football, sack yardage does count against a quarterback. So it's always your guy can get a couple of scrambles in the game to negate some of the sack yardage.
Hey, you bring up a good point. With Brock Bowers, somebody's going to have to step up, one of these receivers. Delp, he's the backup tight end. He's definitely going to be involved. But Dominique Levitt, the Missouri transfer, and also Ra Thomas, the Mississippi State transfer, is going to have to get more involved at Georgia once they come away with victory. I'm going to go with Joe Milton. I was impressed with Milton for the first 30 minutes of football, but Tennessee did not play the full 60 minutes. But I think that Joe Milton going on the road to face off against a Kentucky team it's really been up and down. 1 week their defense can really be locked down defense, and then the next week they give up 30 points. So I just don't know what to expect from this Kentucky team. I do think that this Kentucky team coming off of the bye week is going to be fresh, but I think that this is going to be more of a 28-24 type of game. So I think that Joe Milton's going to do enough for Tennessee to stay in this matchup. So I'm going to go with Joe Milton. As you can see here, we're kind of going away this week with the rushing quarterbacks. So these are probably going to be the top two passers of the week with Carson Beck and Joe Milton. So I'm just hoping for a quarterback to get over 100 yards passing this week. I think that Joe Milton can do that for me. So let's go on now to the running backs. And you're going to go with a guy that has probably been here the most with Quinshon Judkins. He's coming off a sensational game against Auburn, over 100 yards rushing. He gets a very juicy matchup against a Vanderbilt defense that's been up and down too. And then we also get a new face, Jarquez Hunter, the Auburn running back, in a game which you can either be high scoring or it's going to be another 7-3 game once again. So talk about your matchup. I know that you were looking at this one. This was one of the best picks. Quinshon Judkins going up against Vandy.
Yeah, so last week I was going to pick Judkins against Auburn because I thought he'd have a week. But I ended up backing out and taking Mario Anderson because I want to save Judkins for this matchup right here. And I think he's just going to absolutely shred Vanderbilt. And I don't think Ole Miss is going to try to do anything too fancy. So I think it's going to be pound and pound for the Rebels. And I think Judkins easily clears 100 yards rushing on the day.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet. So I'm going to go with Jarquez Hunter. We haven't had an Auburn position player, so this is definitely a first on the show. I don't think that this is going to be a very pretty game. Both offenses have been struggling. I don't know if Will Rogers is going to be ready to go for this one. Mike Wright got the ball against Arkansas. So these are two offenses that just want to ground and pound you. Mississippi State with Joe Marks. And then I think that Jarquez Hunter, he also had a good game against Ole Miss. He had over 90 yards rushing. So I don't expect that to continue. But I'm looking, for an average game. This is probably going to be one of the lower scoring games here at SEC. But why not give it to a new guy here? Go with Jarquez Hunter. I think that he is definitely going to put on a show against Mississippi State. So let's go on now to the pass catchers. We're a week out from, Malik Neighbors and Luther Burden. And look at that. It's a dang on miracle. We have a Vanderbilt wide receiver here. It's Will Sheppard. It's the leading receiver for the Commodores. And then also a familiar face here, Ricky Pearsall. You first took him. He went off for you. I'm going to expect that the same for me. But talk about Will Sheppard. We don't talk about much about these Vandy position players.
Yeah, so I'm getting my Vandy rule qualifications out of the way here on a week where a lot of teams are on the bye, and Will Sheppard's had a really good year. He's definitely in the top 10 as a receiver in the conference in yardage, and he's got good connection with Ken Seals if he's back there. We could see AJ Swan back this week. They've had to play both quarterbacks because of injury, so he seems to have good chemistry with either guy. He had over 100 yards against Missouri. Took a step back against Georgia, but that's completely understandable. And honestly, I kind of wanted to stay away from the Ole Miss defense because I think they are susceptible to putting up big plays. And if somebody's going to make them for Vanderbilt, it's going to be Shepard.
Yeah, we'll see if Shepard can get some big plays to get you some big time numbers this week. I'm going to go Ricky Pearsall. I know that Georgia's secondary is very tough, but if Florida's going to want to stay in this ball game, they're going to have to score a lot of points. And I think that Ricky Pearsall, he's definitely Graham Mertz's favorite target. And Mertz, coming off of the bye week, and also the last time we saw him out, over 400 yards passing against South Carolina. So we'll see if that momentum can continue against the Georgia defense. That is very strong, probably going to be the toughest defense that Florida's faced all season, probably outside that Utah defense. So I'm going to go with Ricky Pearsall. I think that he's going to have a good enough game to get me on the board. So, all right, let's go on now to the most important ones. We're going to go to two SEC West defenses. We're going to trust them this week. Auburn is going to be going up against Mississippi State. Meanwhile, Texas A&M is going to be hosting South Carolina. So talk about the matchup with Auburn and Mississippi State. I'm sure that you're on the same mindset as me. This is going to be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I think that we saw the blueprint for this one just a week ago with Mississippi State and Arkansas. I don't think that Auburn's very inspiring on offense. I don't think Mississippi State is necessarily either. So I think you could have gone with either defense. I have a little bit more faith in Auburn's defense as an overall unit. So I kind of went with them because I figured that matchup will be low scoring.
Yeah, I thought about going with them, but I went with Texas A&M going up against South Carolina. A&M coming off of the bye week. The last time we saw them out was, I believe it was against Tennessee. They let up 20 points in that defensive battle. I don't think that it was all on the defense. I think that going up against South Carolina, though, Spencer Rattler, he's just been up and down. So I just don't really like the environment. They only scored 12 points against Missouri. I think that Texas A&M's defense is better than Missouri's defense, especially playing at home in Kyle Field. I think that Texas A&M really should have no problem with South Carolina. I think that they're going to create some turnovers to really turn the tide here for A&M. So we're going to go with A&M and Auburn's defense heading into week number 9. Before we get into the week 9 slate, let's recap what happened in week number 8. And our week 8 recap is presented by our friends over at SeatGeek. A lot of events going on. The MLB playoffs is about to turn on to the World Series. The matchups will probably be set the next couple of weeks. So the Astros and the Rangers are playing currently in game number 6, and the Phillies and the D-backs will play tomorrow night in their game number 6. And then we also have, the NFL season's going on, college football season. So if you want to get your tickets, SeatGeek, Belly Up Sports for 20% off of your first purchase. Okay, let's dive into some of these games. And we're probably going to get into one of the snooze fest games, unless you're probably a Mississippi State fan. You were definitely excited to see just a victory at this point. But yes, this is a score, ladies and gentlemen. This is for 3-2 of this year, 7-3. Not a whole lot of offense, like I mentioned. No Will Rogers in this one. He's dealing with a shoulder injury. So we saw Mike Wright in this one. Mike Wright scored the only touchdown in the game. DeQuavius Marks, he was the leading rusher for Mississippi State. Not a whole lot of action was going through the air. Let me tell you, both secondaries, there was plenty of turnovers. Arkansas, they had their chances to score. There was that one play. It was a false start that brought back a scoop and score. So that was definitely devastating for Arkansas. And then Mississippi State had a chance at the end of the game to go up by 7, and then the kicker missed the field goal. It was like a 29-yard chip shot field goal. He missed it. Arkansas had like 40 seconds left. So these are just two bad offenses. Let's just say it how it is. Arkansas, I have really nothing to say. I think that I'm more disappointed in Arkansas than I have been more pissed off about South Carolina. Losing 6 straight games and lose a fashion like this today. Arkansas got rid of their offense coordinator. We will see if that is the only guy that is out the door. But for Mississippi State, coming off of the bye week, coming off really 2 not really close games. Mississippi State was 3-3 heading into this one. They're now 4-3. Arkansas falling to 2-6, and this is realistically going to be a team that's going to be missing out on the bowl game, especially with Missouri coming at the end of the season. I don't really see Arkansas seeing that. So Wade, not a lot of negatives to take away. I mean, a lot of negatives to take away from this game, not a whole lot of positives. So what you saw in this defensive battle?
Yeah, I was really puzzled by this one because I thought that Arkansas's offense was doing pretty well, even though they lost to LSU, Texas A&M, and Alabama, and Ole Miss. But they were competitive in all of those games, really, and were able to hang up some points. So I really thought Arkansas was going to put it all together, and I kind of figured Mississippi State was the team that was heading in the wrong direction. I don't think you can say Mississippi State is heading in the right direction, but it's certainly nice to get a win with the backup quarterback in. But yeah, both of these programs are really a mess. And honestly, I think they both need to hit reset and explore new coaching options. Zach Arnett might have saved his job with a win here, but if I'm Mississippi State and I'm looking back at it, you can't put too much press on. I mean, yes, the defense played lights out, but a win's a win. But I think it kind of comes with an asterisk, right? Like, are you really going to hang your hat on a 7-3 win for your coaches, future? So I wouldn't be surprised to see either one of these teams shopping for a new head coach. And I'm just very confused by KJ Jefferson in Arkansas, as you are.
Yeah, I mean, some people are trying to say that he was one of the best quarterbacks coming back from the SEC. I saw that the last couple of years. He's been really good, but you really just looked at this. They start off the season 2-0 and they lose to BYU, and then boom, like once they lost to BYU, all the chips just fell out the door. You got a gauntlet. Texas A&M, Alabama, LSU. I mean, the list just goes on and on. They just went a full-on goose egg through that. Like, losing the BYU game really just tanked this team, and I just don't know the mindset heading into this one. Only scoring 3 points against the Mississippi State defense. It's really been up and down. I mean, I just don't get this game, especially at Arkansas's side. I guess it's just like you're just happy to win this one for Mississippi State. Like you mentioned, this is like, okay, we're back on track. No, only putting up 7 points is really unacceptable. Backup quarterback or not. But yeah, this is definitely ugly football from both of these teams. But we'll see if one of them can get back on track. We'll see Mississippi State can tack on some wins here to get to bowl eligibility. Arkansas is going to need a miracle to even get to 6 wins. So we'll move on now to the next one, and this next one was our SEC Talk Game of the Week. It looked like Tennessee was going to run away with this one, but Nick Saban and the boys said not so fast. Went on a 27-0 run in the second half. You thought that in the first half, Alabama was going to be playing their way out of the college football playoff. Second half, they look like a college football playoff team as Alabama wins this one 34-20. Joe Milton, the offense, they got out to a fantastic start. The first play, of the drive, Squirrel White found him in the end zone. Tennessee's offense was rolling, and then second half adjustments just hit Tennessee right in the face. In Alabama, like Tennessee did, they smoked their cigars on the sideline. And, Jalen Milroe, he was very shaky in the first half. And then the second half, he hit Isaiah Bond for that long touchdown, and that really got the Crimson Tide going. You saw McClellan, the running back, get going too. So really, this was just a tale of one half being bad for Alabama and then really turning around. So what were your thoughts on this one? This was definitely a complete 180. We were thinking at the half, I mean, man, this is about to be a Tennessee runaway.
Yeah, I thought Tennessee had turned the corner and was going to pull off the upset. But Alabama, I mean, we've seen them do this again against A&M and against Ole Miss. Don't feel too confident if you're up against Alabama at the half, because this team, they got some resilience to them. They come back and they battle hard the second half. 34 points overall. I thought this was a good showing from Alabama. I think the story remains the same. I think they're as beatable as anybody in this conference. I don't hold them to that same regard as Georgia in the East. But I don't think that they're a bad football team at all, and I think that they find ways to win. Jalen Milroe's really coming into his own. I think the trust between the team and him and Coach Saban. So this team is still a force to be reckoned with in the West, but LSU will have a chance to, put their claim on it here in 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. This would have definitely been a much different talk if Tennessee was on the winning side of this one. We'd be talking about Alabama already having 2 losses and not even being at that LSU matchup, but they only have 1 loss. If they beat LSU, they're pretty much in the driver's seat to win the SEC West. And they don't really care what Ole Miss does since they beat Ole Miss and they would beat, they would be undefeated, the only undefeated team in the SEC West. So a lot to play for Alabama. Definitely don't count them out in the SEC West and also the college football playoff race, especially them being back into the top 10. So we will move on now to the next one. And like we mentioned and hinted at the earliest part of the show, the Battle of Columbia. South Carolina went on the road to Columbia, Missouri, number 20 Missouri. And this, like we mentioned, wasn't even close. 34-12. Spencer Rattler and this offense and the defense, I don't know, they're all out of sorts. Shane Beamer trying to break his foot to piss off his team. Well, it didn't work. Missouri, definitely one of the real surprises of the season. I don't really think many people had this Missouri team 7-1 heading into the bye week, but they are. Like you mentioned, your guys just went off. Like all 3 of the guys that we picked in SEC fantasy were the 3 storylines with Missouri's win. Brady Cook, he was cooking it up. Cody Schrader, the leading rusher for Missouri, and then also Luther Burden having another great game. So Missouri, I mean, all was clicking. If this defense can just improve week in and week out, this is going to be a team to look for on the other side. I just don't really think that there's much to talk about South Carolina. We talked a lot about South Carolina after their embarrassing loss to Florida. This is looking like a team that's not even going to make it to a bowl game. If you look at the rest of their schedule, I just don't really see the wins that they can get it at. But what are your overall thoughts in the Battle of Columbia?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch this one, but I did see the highlights, and it just like this Missouri offense is humming per usual. And defensively, this was probably one of their best games as a team. I know South Carolina just really didn't look sharp in this one, and that probably helped Missouri's stats defensively. But I think this team is more of a complete team than we all think. And they're sitting there with one conference loss, but still have Georgia to play. So technically, still everything is in front of them. And for South Carolina, man, I thought they had it figured out with Shane Beamer. Looked like a brilliant hire a year ago, and they signed him to an extension. But it's really just been disappointing this year with him. And, of course, you're going to have to enter in a new quarterback era as well. So I think it will be interesting down the stretch. Does Spencer Rattler have enough of a profile he can bank his NFL hopes on? And do they potentially not even start him in some of these games? Because, I mean, what is there to play for if you're South Carolina?
There's really not much. We do have a comment rolling through talking about the LSU-Bama game coming up. I hope LSU can pull a miracle and beat Alabama. We'll see if the Tigers can pull off back-to-back wins. If you remember last year, I mean, that was one of the game of the years that actually won an award on this show, the best play of the year with Mason Taylor's 2-point conversion. We'll see if it comes down to that, the way that both offenses have been looking. Wouldn't be shocked either, but Missouri gets a big victory and gets a lot of momentum heading to that bye week. Honestly, if the Georgia-Missouri game were to happen, I honestly would probably think about taking Missouri. But we'll see in the next coming weeks if I'm still on that mindset. But really liking the way that this Missouri team has really rebounded after that loss against LSU. I mean, if they didn't lose that, we would be talking about them being probably a top 10 team right now. That would just be an absolutely insane. But Missouri going to head into the bye week with a lot of momentum. Let's go on now to the next game. And this was really the only non-conference game here of all the conference matchups was Army at number 19 LSU. This was the first meeting in Tiger Stadium. The last time that these two teams met was in 1931, and it was a shutout victory, not by LSU, but Army. They won 21-0. Well, LSU, 100 years later, almost 100 years later, said, we are going to triple your score of our first meeting and put up 62 on you. So it was definitely a fun environment to be in. They had the parachuters drop in, get the game ball in, and then Army fans and their team. This was probably about as rare as you can say it. They didn't get booed going out into the field. This is about the only team that will probably get cheered on. I bet Florida, the next team that's going to be coming in, won't get the same affection from LSU fans. So, Wade, once again, you were at the stadium. Tell us how this game went down.
Yeah, I thought the pageantry behind it was really cool with the paragliders coming in, delivering the football, as you mentioned. And then I thought everybody was pretty respectful on both sides. I kind of sat near the Army band, and I guess that was my only disappointment from the game. I thought Army would be like Texas A&M and have the corpse band, in uniform, do something at the half with the LSU band, but they did not. But on the football field, LSU did exactly what we needed to see. They got the starters in, they got their reps, and really looked pretty much flawless. Jaden Daniels was able to make big connections with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, and then Garrett Nussmeyer was able to play the majority of the second half, and we even think we cycled through 3 or 4 running backs as well. So I was really impressed with the body of work for LSU as a team. And then defense, I know this isn't a big opponent, but coming off of 2 really good defensive outs between the Army game and the Auburn game, I think the defense has its confidence back heading into the most critical stretch of the season.
Yeah, there's really not much to take away from this one. Just LSU taking care of business. This was their final pre-Alabama test. And, the only question I have is, what did you think of that new uniform combo that LSU was wearing?
You know me. I didn't like last year when we wore all white. I think if you're going to do the white home jerseys with the white pants, you got to get a second pair of white pants that matches the stripes on the jersey. And then I think from there, I would say it's a good look, but honestly, I kind of wish that we would have, if we were going to do an alternate, I kind of wish we went all in and did one themed for this game. I'm never opposed to seeing us wear purple either, but I think they fell a little flat.
Yeah, I agree with you. They looked very Green Bay Packers-esque. So we'll see the purple unis against Georgia State. If not, then they're just going to stick with the traditional uniforms. They are definitely going to be sticking traditional against LSU and Alabama. That's about the most traditional uniform matchup that you'll have in 2 weeks. But like we mentioned, LSU, 6-2, still a lot to play for heading into that big matchup on the road against Tuscaloosa. Sure that Alabama team is going to be ready. They're going to be wanting some revenge what went down in Baton Rouge last year. So we have one more matchup, an SEC West battle. And this was an interesting one. A lot of storylines, Auburn with Hugh Freeze, the former Ole Miss head coach, Lane Kiffin, coming down to the Plains. And this, was definitely closer than I think that a lot of experts have. But this rivalry game has always come down to the wire. Ole Miss does covering the 6.5 line. So if you bet that, you made some money this past weekend. But number 13, Ole Miss 28, Auburn 21. The main storyline we saw here was that Robbie Ashford got the starting role here for Auburn. I don't think there was much of a difference. This Ole Miss defense, you could talk about LSU's defense improving. I think that Ole Miss defense after that, I know that they haven't really seen an offense like LSU's, but they've really been clicking on all cylinders after that game. Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator, has done a good job. Like we mentioned, Quinshon Judkins, he had himself a game, 100 yards and a touchdown. Auburn, I think it's pretty much the same storylines. This offense just isn't good to win an SEC game. Mississippi State got lucky winning a 7-3 game, but we'll see if Auburn can do the same when they host Mississippi State this upcoming week. But Ole Miss, this could have been a trap game, but once again, Ole Miss survives. And, I think that everyone wants to talk about Alabama, controlling their destiny. But say if LSU, takes down Alabama and Ole Miss wins out, Ole Miss is going to be your SEC West. So don't count out Ole Miss just yet.
Ole Miss still has a say in it, but they also have a game against Georgia to prepare for. They got to play a little bit better than they did on Saturday if they want to hang with the Bulldogs. But a win's a win. A road win is definitely a win. Those aren't easy in this conference. And Auburn, look, this is just a team that's up and down. We saw them get beat pretty bad against LSU, but we saw them hang in there with Georgia. So you don't know what you're getting with these guys. But they still have a good chance at bowl eligibility with a winnable game on Saturday. And for Ole Miss, you get a tune-up game against Vanderbilt, and then it's go time. You play Georgia. So,
yeah, that's about as tune-up as you can get because Georgia, in 2 weeks, especially in Athens. That is going to be in a hostile environment. And then, we haven't seen that matchup in quite some time. So that'd definitely be a treat for SEC fans watching around the whole entire country. So let's get into how the boys did in week 8 pick'em results. Last week we saw Chet get first place. Well, he gets back down to reality this week, 2-3. When you take the Gamecocks and then go with, Arkansas, we all got that one wrong. And I believe he picked against Alabama. Yeah, he picked Tennessee. So 2-3 for Chet. Wade and I have really been on the same picture this whole entire season, 4-1 for both of us. So that will close the book on week number 8. Let's get now into week number 9. Like Wade mentioned earlier in the show, a lot of teams on the bye week. So 5 games on the schedule into week number 9, and week number 9 previews presented by Fanatics. There's our link at the bottom of your screen. If it's getting cooler temperatures, if you need to upgrade your gear, head on over to Fanatics. Like I mentioned on every show here on SEC Talk, they got daily deals, whether that's free shipping, 25% off your orders, 65% off. They got some clearance racks or whatever you want to call it. So head on over to Fanatics if you want to support us. So let's go on now to SEC Week 9 slate, and let's get into your early morning games. Only one. It's 11 a.m. kickoff on ESPN. South Carolina at Texas A&M, the annual cross-rivalry matchup, the Maroon Bowl. South Carolina at Texas A&M. South Carolina has been down. Texas A&M has also been down, coming off of back-to-back losses to Tennessee and Alabama. Coming off of the bye week, so do you see Texas A&M using that bye week to get back on track here against South Carolina?
Yeah, I think it was a well-timed bye week for Texas A&M. They had the tough road loss against Tennessee going into it, and kind of gave Max Johnson some time to really work with the number ones in this offense. He got kind of thrown into starting duties due to an injury a few weeks ago. So I think this A&M come out strong. This is always a tough one for South Carolina. Until I think last year, they hadn't won this matchup since A&M came into the conference. And with it being a road game and the trajectory of this Gamecock team, I don't have a lot of confidence in them. I got to go with Texas A&M.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I mean, if I'm picking Texas A&M defense and SEC fantasy, I'm picking them to win. I just don't – I think my faith of South Carolina had just went out the door. I did – love them going into the season. They were building a lot of momentum. I know that they lost the bowl game against Notre Dame, but they had a lot of returning talent. You lose Marshawn Lloyd to the portal. You went on the USC. Your defense, wasn't proven at the end of the season, but man, this has just been an absolute dumpster fire of a season and a season to forget. Like you mentioned, South Carolina has really struggled with Texas A&M since they joined the SEC. So I think going on the road to College Station, Texas A&M coming off of the bye week, they're fresh. And Max Johnson is going to have a bounce back game. So give me the Aggies. Will Chet do the same thing he did last week? No, he will not. So all on the Aggies. I think that we're all off of the South Carolina train. I don't think that we're going to see that logo maybe against Clemson. I mean, the whole state, South Carolina, is not really doing too well in football right now. So we'll see if somebody can arise from that state. So we will see. The next one that we have is the annual Georgia versus Florida game. This rivalry game is always a treat in Jacksonville. That stadium has definitely been busy. A lot of football games going on that stadium as of recently. Number 1, Georgia. Both of these teams are coming off of the bye week. Georgia really hasn't got tested all season. The Auburn game, that was probably about the closest game that they had all season. Florida coming off of a big road victory on the road against South Carolina, probably their best offensive performance of the season. Well, if they're going to win this one, they're going to have to do it again. So do you see Florida pulling off the upset or Georgia staying undefeated?
I think Florida has shown us that they can hang in a game like this. Graham Mertz has improved as the season's gone along. If Florida can play mistake-free football, I think they can pace the Georgia offense. However, I just really like what I'm seeing from Carson Beck. And Georgia's starting to establish that run game, so that's really dangerous too. I think this will be close, but I'm going to go with Georgia in this one. I'm not so sure the winner even gets to 30 points, so I think it's going to be Georgia 27, Florida 21.
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Florida at the start of the season, their defense wasn't doing too hot, but I think as of late, they have just been improving week in and week out. I know they gave up 39 to South Carolina, but I think they had 2 weeks to prepare for this Georgia passing attack. Got Carson Beck without Brock Bowers, where is Georgia going to, like I mentioned, is it going to be Dominic Lovett? Is it going to be Delp? Is it going to be Rod Thomas? Somebody's got to have to step up. It's not going to be all on Brock Bowers anymore. Do we see more of the running game get involved, with Dajuan Edwards? But I'm going to go with Georgia, but I think that this is going to be closer than line. Right now, Georgia is favored by double digits. Wouldn't surprise me. This is always an annual rivalry game. Florida is just really hungry. Georgia has owned them the past couple of years. But in the end, though, I'm going to go with Georgia to win this one. I'll say like a 28-21 type of game. It's going to be a defensive battle, a game won in the trenches, but I like the Dogs to advance and move on to undefeated. And Chet, is he going to go with the upset? No, he will not. He's going to go with the Dogs. So pretty consistent so far. 2 sweeps to start off week number 9, and we will go on now to the next game here in the slate. I don't know which one's going to be our SEC Talk game of the week. It might just have to be all of them because I don't really see one that's really sticking out. But the next one is SEC West showdown here, Mississippi State at Auburn. And this one has been a back and forth rivalry between these two teams. Like we mentioned, Mississippi State coming off of a 7-3 victory against Arkansas on the road. Auburn in really much need of a win coming off of back-to-back losses, one to Ole Miss, one to LSU. Those are two of the best teams in the SEC. So who do you have between the Dogs and the Tigers?
Well, Tyler, this one was a 3-2 game not too long ago. So I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities this week after what we just saw from Mississippi State winning 7-3 last week. But I do think it will be low scoring. I don't see it being that low scoring. It looks like Auburn has made the switch at quarterback, like you mentioned. I think that could be a good thing. I don't know if it's a tremendous upgrade or not. But as long as Mike Wright has started at Mississippi State, I think they're a little bit limited. They were already pretty much struggling on offense as it was. It's tough to have a guy come in that late in the year, especially when the team's been used to Rodgers starting for almost 4 years now. So I'm going to go with the home team in this one. If this was in Starkville, I think I would have jumped on the Bulldogs. But I'm going to go with Auburn in this one. As we mentioned, they hung around in a couple games against Georgia and against Ole Miss, and I think this time they kind of break through.
Yeah, this is a coin flip for me. I think that the home factor is definitely key. Will Rogers playing in this one would definitely help for Mississippi State. Mike Wright. If Mike Wright plays, I just don't think that Mississippi State stands a chance in a road environment like Jordan-Hare. Auburn fans are very hungry to just see their team win a football game, and I think they get it here. Will it be pretty? No. It's probably going to be a low-scoring game. It's going to be the 3-2 game that we saw a couple of years ago that I'm sure none of these two fan bases want to bring up ever again. But this is probably going to be like a 17-14 type of game. It's not going to be that much offense. Touchdowns are going to be very limited. I swear, if we come back on the show, it's like 42-40, then I give up on predicting scores. But I'm going to go with a defensive battle here. These are two offenses, like I mentioned, that like to ground and pound you. But I think that Auburn at home, this is a 2:30 game, so it's not going to be the same as under the lights in Jordan-Hare. But I think the fans are going to show out, and Auburn is going to get the victory. Chet, is he going to go with the hometown Mississippi State boys? Yes, he will. He's going to go with the Bulldogs. I guess to pull off the upset here, Auburn is the favorite. Mississippi State, though, has the better record. So Chet going, I guess, with a minor upset, if you want to call it that. If the Bulldogs get a victory, then you'll probably see Chet on the leaderboard here in week number 9. All right, we will continue on now to an SEC East battle here. This is actually going to be our SEC Talk game of the week. Both of these teams are 5-2. They're probably out of the SEC East race, but this is still a very good matchup between two high-powered offenses. Number 21, Tennessee at Kentucky. Kentucky coming off of the bye week, so they're going to be fresh. Tennessee, they're coming off of a very physical game. They thought that they had it. So what's going to be the emotion of this team coming into a road environment? Kentucky, coming off of the bye week, their fans are going to be definitely motivated to see their team back on the field. So who do you have in this one? This feels like an automatic trap game for me. Tennessee coming off of the Bama game, Kentucky coming off the bye week. You got the Cats pulling off the upset.
I do. I have Kentucky winning this ball game. I think a lot like the Auburn game, this one comes down to home field advantage. I like Kentucky here under the lights at home. And I think that Tennessee, like you said, an emotional loss against Alabama. They thought they had it. It's tough to turn the page on that sometimes. And Kentucky, they've had a bye week to kind of clean their slate. They kind of struggled going into the bye week, so I think that their focus has fully been this Tennessee game for 2 weeks. They got a clean head, and I think that Devin Leary, we really haven't talked about him much on the show. I thought he was going to be a staple of SEC fantasy. He hasn't been that guy yet, but maybe this is kind of his breakout game.
Yeah, it's got to be his breakout game. I don't think this is going to be, all three of these games that we went through. I think that the defenses are going to show up. Kentucky's defense, their worst game of the season was against Georgia, but I think that they're really going to be locked and loaded here. Tennessee's defense has played very good defense. They played good defense in the first half and really just fell apart in the second half. So if Tennessee wants to come away for this one, Tennessee's defense is going to have to play full 4 quarters. You could say the same thing for their offense. I think that the emotional factor is going to play a role in this one. I think that Kentucky is going to be up going into the half, but I think that Tennessee is going to make some second half adjustments. I think it's going to be close. I'll say 24-21. Tennessee gets the road victory, but I would not be shocked if Kentucky pulls away here and pulls. I almost did it, but I am going to go with Tennessee. I'm not quite done of not believing in that team. Let's see it. It's 1-1. Kentucky and Tennessee. Is Chuck going to go? He's going to go with the Vols. So, all right, Wade, there you go. You're going to be rooting for Big Blue Nation to rise you up on the leaderboard. So 2 of us going with the Vols and 1 on the Wildcats. So
I got a good chance.
Yep, there's your chance right there. You'll definitely be tuned into that one at 6 o'clock on ESPN under the lights at Kroger Field. Definitely going to be a fun environment. Would definitely not be shocked if they sold out that stadium. So one more to get to. This is one more cross rivalry matchup. We see this one every year. Vanderbilt at number 12, Ole Miss. Vanderbilt is, say the same way. They're just really in need of a victory, and it doesn't get any easier. Ole Miss has really been feeling themselves. They've really been riding high after losing to Bama. They have just been really on cruise control, coming off of a game that we could have said that it was a trap game. Of all the upsets that went on Saturday, Ole Miss was able to survive. Now they go back to the friendly confines of Vaught Hemingway Stadium. So is this one even going to be close? Going to go with the Rebels or going to go with the shocker of the world of Vanderbilt?
I think Vanderbilt can hang in there a little bit in this one. They had a bye week this past week. Ole Miss had a squeaker against Auburn. If Auburn can hang in there, I think Vanderbilt can as well. They might even be better than Auburn offensively. So I think Vanderbilt's going to score some points in this one, but ultimately Ole Miss will pull away. I'm going to go Ole Miss 38, Vanderbilt 17.
Yeah, Ole Miss is going to pull away from this one. Too much offense for Ole Miss. I think that Vanderbilt, their offense will be able to score, but I think that I've really been impressed with Ole Miss's defense as of late. So I think that even with a physical game that Ole Miss played last week yesterday against Auburn, I think that Ole Miss at home, just too much to handle for Vanderbilt. And Chet is going to go with Ole Miss. This is like the most that he's picked the 2 Mississippi schools this season. So we'll see if it works out for him to go with the 2 Mississippi schools with Mississippi State and Ole Miss. That is it for week number 9. We will see how we did in week number 9 on next week's show. But before we close the book, let's get into some hot topics. And we're probably going to get into the hottest one going into the first one. Arkansas is 2-6 right now. They are coming off of 6 straight losses, an embarrassing 7-3 performance. They fired their offensive coordinator, but is it time to fire Sam Pittman?
Yeah, I think it is. I wouldn't have thought so going into the season, but you lose 5 games in a row. Or what is it, 6 games now?
Yeah, 6.
6 in a row now. Like you mentioned earlier, pretty much dashes all bowl hopes. This team's not going to beat Missouri. I can't remember who else they have down the stretch in the SEC West, but no, I don't think this team has much of a chance. They're definitely a bottom 3 team in the conference, and probably going to stay that way with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma. Those are 2 states that Arkansas desperately needs to recruit well in. And as those teams now are in the SEC, you're going to have a lot of guys stay at home and not play for the Razorbacks. So they got to get creative with this hire. It's not a shoe-in fit, like maybe in Florida or Georgia or LSU, somewhere with a lot of talent locally. So they need to really think long and hard about who the next coach is going to be, but I would go and get a jump start off and go ahead and cut ties now. And that after Thanksgiving, you can be first in line to interview some of these coaches before bowl season.
Yeah, I agree with you. You definitely got to be first in line. You know, could we see the South Carolina job open up? Could we see Texas A&M? You know, the way that I don't think that you're going to see Clemson. They're not going to get rid of Dabo that soon. But I think that Arkansas, it's about time. 6 straight losses. I think that Sam Pittman, you giving him enough time. Firing the offense coordinator could be one thing, but I just think that this locker room just doesn't want to play for this man anymore. The way that their body language has been these past couple of weeks, that could be the losing streak they haven't really felt to win in over. But I think it's time to cut ties with Sam Pittman. The next one, we're going to go on now to Jayden Daniels. He's definitely already probably in the Heisman race. But would you take it a step further, with the way that Michael Penix looks last night against Arizona State through 2 picks? Right now, if you look at the odds, for some reason, Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy, whether you look at his stats, it's not the same level of Jayden Daniels. So is Jayden Daniels right now the Heisman leader?
I wouldn't say he's the leader, but I definitely think that he's in the top 3, and I think it's as wide open for anybody. I mean, yeah, if Mike Penix rebounds from his performance against Arizona State and that team goes undefeated and wins the conference and they're in the playoff, it's going to be hard to upseed him. But we've seen teams have quarterbacks, with 2 losses that have won the Heisman, with RG3, Lamar Jackson, Johnny Manziel, last year with Caleb Williams. So as long as LSU is relevant and they put up a good fight against Alabama, I don't think that that's much of a factor. LSU continues to win, and he really could have a signature Heisman moment against the Crimson Tide in a couple weeks.
Hey, Joe Burrow did it back in 2019. So, Jayden Daniels, he has an opportunity. I feel like if LSU could win that one, and Daniels is really the main factor, the reason why that the Tigers come away with a victory, I think that he would definitely go over Michael Penix and the way that Penix looked. I know it's only 1 game, but, the odds makers having J.J. McCarthy, I just don't get it. Michigan really hasn't played anybody. If you look at the stats, he's not even close to 2,000 yards in chimes in. JD the leader all day. McCarthy is a bum. Penix is a bum. Nix is a bum. Okay, and also Williams is a bum. So everyone's a bum except for the guy that is on purple and gold. So that's Chet with his purple and gold glasses that you see in the comments. But we'll move on to our hot topics. I agree that Jayden Daniels is going to be deserving the Heisman race. He has plenty of opportunity to probably be the leader after the Alabama game if LSU can take down the Crimson Tide. So we will definitely see. Still a lot to play for. Next one is, which coach gets our early vote for SEC Coach of the Year?
I'll let you go first on this one. My first thought was to go Brian Kelly.
Baby. But Eli Drinkwitz would be my pick.
Yeah, I was about to say I need to bite my tongue on that one. I feel like Drinkwitz probably is the Coach of the Year. I think that nobody had that team winning some games on the season. They're already at 7 games this year. I think that's definitely a deserving case. And honestly, if Nick Saban were to retire tomorrow, I'd get on the phone with the guy up in Columbia, Missouri, and see if he wants to move within the conference.
Yeah, we'll see. A person that I think that would move to take the Arkansas job to look out for would be Deion Sanders, honestly. I know that Colorado isn't doing too great right now. And last time we saw him on the field, they lost to Stanford. But I think that Deion Sanders is probably going to be a hot commodity. I know that they have all the talent. His son's going to be gone and all that. But I just think that all these athletic directors are just going to go after Deion. I could just feel it. It's going to be somebody. There's no way that he stays at Colorado for more than 2 years. I just can't really see it. So I think that's going to be a hot name once again. I know that he's on a multi-year contract and all that, but I think that Deion would definitely be up on there. So not a lot of news going on, so we're going to ask this question again. Who won and lost the weekend? We'll start off with the winners of the weekend in the SEC.
Winners of the weekend. Oh, Mississippi State, you're a winner.
All right.
Barely 7-3. But hey, they got back in the win column. So I think that they're a winner of the weekend. But overall, my overall winner of the weekend would be Alabama. I think just solidifying themselves as drivers in the SEC West. A big win against Tennessee, a team that they lost an emotional game to last year.
I'm going to give it to Ole Miss. I think that Auburn game is always tricky to get through that, especially with the Georgia game looming, the Egg Bowl looming at the end of the season. If they would have lost that game to Auburn, they probably would have been out of the SEC West race the way that Alabama's been playing. So I think that Ole Miss winning that one, staying in the race, so it was definitely a huge one for them. All right, who was the losers of the weekend? I think that we could probably agree on one team.
Yeah, their logo's already on the screen for you, and it's not LSU. It's Arkansas, 7-3 loss, and just really a disappointing weekend. They spared the Gamecocks that honor.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I'm going to go with Tennessee. I think that this could have been the game that really could have vaulted them, because if you really look at it, they get Georgia at home, and the way that, Georgia, Brock Bowers being out, we don't know what their offense is going to look without him. If Tennessee would have beat Alabama, I think that they would have really been in the driver's seat. I know that they lost against Florida, but I think, Tennessee with the home factor, but all that's gone now. I think that with their second half blunders, the SEC East races out the door. The New Year's Six is probably out the door for them, so they'll probably be one of the Florida Bowls, whether that's the Citrus Bowl, the Outback Bowl, or whatever. But I think that was a really big loss for Tennessee. That really knocked them out. The playoff race, the East race, a lot of main factors. So that was definitely a huge loss for Tennessee. So Tennessee is my losers of the weekend. All right, that's going to be it for SEC Talk week number 9. We appreciate everybody tuning in and chiming in the comments, and also hitting that like button on the Facebook page. You can either subscribe to our Sports Scrambled channel to keep up with us, or follow us on, the SEC Talk Facebook page. If you just look up our show, SEC Talk, it's definitely been growing by the day. And we will be back here next week, recapping week number 9. And yes, we're getting to the double digits of the weeks. Week number 10 is coming up right around the corner. So we appreciate everyone tuning in, and we will see you back here next time and next Sunday here on SEC Talk. Have a good one.